Good morning. It's April 25th, 2022 at 8:20 a.m. my time this morning. And the thoughts that have been floating around my head this morning really are more on a personal level because I think, you know, laying out the facts of a multifaceted macroeconomic system that uses regulation and government policy through the legal scope of revolving door seems to sometimes land flat on people who don't particularly understand our system. So I'm going to try to navigate and thread the needle based on a couple of things that are in pop culture at the moment and also just my personal experience. So a little bit about me. So I grew up as an upper middle class kid, and what I mean by upper middle class kid is that my father was an attorney, and he's a pretty successful one at that. My grandfather was an independent oil guy. He was an oil broker, and both were successful on their own terms. They were self-made, and they worked their ass off, and they were honest guys, and they were good guys, and just incredibly beautiful human beings, and incredible inspiration to me based on the life that they came up and had to endure and fight through and ultimately become successful. So they were always really a standout sort of inspiration to me, and I always had the framework to understand the commitment of work and vision and really commitment and all of those things that come with it. And that's what I've, you know, basically built my life to try to achieve. And so in 2008, when my life got completely destroyed by a system that didn't make sense, I had to find the answers. And, as I was growing up, as an upper middle class kid, I had a lot of things that many might regard as privilege, right? And in some ways, that's definitely the truth. I wouldn't have regarded it then, but I do now from the standpoint that, I had a good education. I never had to have fear for a roof over my head or, food or, opportunity and those sorts of things. And it was really just about what I could do to move, forward and be dynamic and be driven. And that was really the only thing that I had to overcome, right? And so basically born on, well, in comparison to a lot, maybe born on second base. Certainly wasn't born on third base. But I decided to, instead of work for the system, I ended up wanting to be independent, and there's a lot of risks that comes with that. And, growing up, I was in a fraternity, I've been around a lot of rich kids. I was one of those kids in high school, for example, that could navigate between the stoners, the jocks, the rich kids and everything. And I got a chance to understand how each of them sort of operated in their own sort of cliques. And, I just kind of was my own dude and I did my own thing. And I was a skater growing up. And so I was literally independent. And what's that have to do with anything? Well, so, by the time you get into college and you you get into a fraternity, I had the chance to be a part of the rich fraternity because I was always like right on the doorstep of the rich, quite frankly, So I could speak the language and I kind of had the code to get in the gate, but at the same time, I didn't really want to be those guys. But at the same time, I kind of like anybody else, it's fun to drive around in a convertible with hot chicks to go do fun things, I mean, honestly, that's stuff that was always, something I wanted to be a part of and was a part of for the large part of my existence. And, the choice that I made, it was interesting because I had an offer to join the richest fraternity on campus, but I remember they asked, they needed to see financial declarations for how much my dad made. And I was like, there's no way in hell my dad's going to provide that stuff because my dad's a real humble guy. He doesn't like to, prove to everybody how successful he was. But at the same time, I mean, it was just kind of gross, quite frankly. And so I had another opportunity to join a different fraternity that was more like my speed. They were just a bunch of crazy dudes that had a lot of fun. And a lot of them, quite frankly, were from Chicago. Some of whom were connected to, I think, mob guys. And certainly they seemed to act that way. But, and same with some friends of mine from California. So, I wasn't in the elite fraternity, but I had some elite guys in my fraternity that were more like knockoffs from the elite because they were just crazy. So that was kind of my existence growing up. And I had a lot of fun, man. It was cool, but it really taught me a lot of the times when I was around some of these ultra uber wealthy people that they lived by a different language. And a lot of the times they laughed at people. They literally did. They looked at people that were lesser than them And they just looked at him pathetically. Like, you couldn't hold my dirty laundry, sort of thing, right? Hold my dirty laundry. And it was gross. And I was just laughed because ultimately I'm an athlete. And athletes, you can't pretend your way to success. You got to be good. And I was never, a spectacular athlete. I never made it to professional level in anything, but I was pretty good in a few things. But I know the difference in the culture, right? And so ultimately, I know that most of you out there have at some point experienced what I'm talking about culturally. Like, you don't belong. Like, you can't talk in the midst of some of these people because you don't speak their language. And it's because it's a cultural riff and it's made that way. It's not your imagination. You're not welcome. You're not part of the groovy kid clique. I shouldn't say the groovy kid clique because the groovy kids are something entirely different, right? But, like, let's just say the richest of the rich clique. And that's not to say that rich people or all rich people are assholes. Not all of them are. A lot of people, like, quite frankly, my grandfather and my dad, are incredibly stoic, beautiful people that are driven, that are professionals, that have ethics and integrity and morals, and do things the right way to the best of their ability. The gold standard, and that's what I was raised to be a part of. And that's why when the world fell apart around me, I was able to ask these questions that I knew didn't add up. And then really, once you work through it, you work through like layer upon layer upon layer of deception. And some of it legal deception, but not really, because you got to understand the policy and you got to understand the tricks and the techniques that do all of these things. But in 2022, this smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller class of ultra, ultra, ultra rich, and I refuse to call them elite, because elite to me is like Michael Jordan. Elite to me is like Kelly Slater or, Travis Rice or any number, Alex Honnold, people who do superhuman things. Most of the time, these people are grifters, okay? They can build verticals. They can build composites. They can be surrounded by attorneys and accountants and all sorts of things and tax experts and all of these things that if they can grift and they can steal and they can do this and that, and then ultimately the people at the top of this criminality find each other, and then they make rules and regulations for themselves. And that's called the aristocracy. And I hate the aristocracy. I always have. I'm an American. Being an American should, from the very get-go, if you have any education whatsoever, despise absolute power. Because then what that does is that ties your shoelaces together or handcuffs people who are dynamic and calibrated to become successful and have the opportunity to be successful in those sorts of scenarios. And it's like our country has been lost to thievery. And these people are laughing at you. They don't think, they know you're too stupid and too lazy and too useless to do anything about it. Now, I say that with sarcasm and in a bit of remorse, because I don't want to think of anybody as stupid. I don't want to think of anybody as not capable of getting there. But for the most part, the bad guys have been right. And because there's just a loud universe of noise and so much distraction, and then I'm gonna just transition briefly to the other thing to try to put this thing into ultimate perspective for you. So, look, there's a pretty salacious trial on happening right now between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, and I've tuned into quite a bit of it actually, and some of it is awkward. I mean, it's almost embarrassing, but it's also really telling in a lot of ways. I mean, I've got personal feelings about it, but I'm not going to go into too much detail because I'm sure no expert in this sort of thing. But I just think of it in terms of the bigger picture, that literally millions upon millions of people can become completely obsessed with a celebrity, lawsuit like that's going on with Johnny, suing Amber Heard for defamation. And people will hang on the every, happening in court between two celebrities that they have to have some sort of opinion about, right? Meanwhile, the story that I brought to you literally shows you the facts and the evidence of a criminality so immense that it brought the global economy to its knees. It literally set up tens of millions of unsophisticated borrowers and probably millions upon millions of pensioners around the world that didn't have a choice in the matter of how money managers invested their money based on an incredible pipeline of fiction and deception. That once you understand all the pieces, you're like, oh my God, that's how they did it. Oh my God, they're just nothing but liars and scoundrels and cheats. And they look like they're normal people, but all they do is lie. That's their lives. And they got incentivized to do it by liars at the top of the food chain, which are CEOs. And we undress and unmask all of it. It's not that difficult, but the noise out there, people would rather spend time learning about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard and Amber leaving a dookie, as gross as that is, and other things that appear to be just, crazy in that case. They would rather spend more time than understanding how their government, the democracy, the greatest democracy in the world, a democracy that took 246 years of incredible sacrifice to the tunes of millions of lives and beyond our count in blood and treasure, to give people an opportunity to become citizens. And they pay that system back by ignoring the massive truth that I put in front of you and celebrating, quite frankly, celebrity. It's gross. It's all of it's gross, and they're laughing at you. I don't know what else to tell you. In the end, I'm going to be fine. You know, I do what I do, but I am very committed to getting this truth to the American people because I am sick and tired of these freaking demons from hell lying to us and laughing at us and laughing at the world that they can get away with it. And it's just a joke. And they didn't earn it. Again, what you have to understand above all else is that the American dollar became the world's reserve currency primarily because we won World War II. Okay? We're coming to the end of that. And what we've done for the last 30 years is we've handed the keys to the greatest civilization in the history of the world to a bunch of fucking thieves. How does that sit with you? How does that sit with you to know that you're a mark and they think you're an idiot because they think you're a coward that will do nothing? I certainly don't think that about me. What they think about me is they think, dude, you're pissing in the wind. You're never going to get traction. We've got your number. That's what those guys at Netflix and HBO and all of the others who decided, you know what? We get our money from these guys. We're not going to tell the truth. Why would we do that? We get our bonuses from it. Good luck. So I had to take it to the people, man, and that's what I'm doing, one step at a time. And it's gnarly. Oh my God, I have sacrificed so much to just tell you this truth. And whether or not you want to dive in is up to you. But eventually, you will be the mark, and eventually you will suffer if you haven't suffered enough already. And if you're ready to join the fight, please hashtag Exodus, hashtag the resurrection, hashtag truth is marching, hashtag failure is not an option. Like and subscribe Patrick Lovell Truth Bombs the Con on YouTube. Please watch The Con. Share The Con. It's at www.thecon.tv. And we've got to come together and we've got to organize and we've got to build a movement for justice. Our country has been stolen from us. Do you want it back? I do. Onwards and upwards.